Hello everyone, hope you're having a wonderful day and welcome back to Decoding the Bobby Fischer series. And today we are back to 1956 USA Junior Championship where Bobby is playing fantastic chess so far. And in this game, Fischer is black, so we are looking the game from black side, and Blake K is white. And we have a very interesting Sicilian. So Blake played e4, and we have c5 and f3 and we have nc6. So no knight draw today. d4 takes, knight f6, knight c3. And instead of like Khan or Sveshnikov, we have the classical Sicilian with pawn to d6. Bishop to e2, pawn to e5, knight to b3. So far all the main line. Bishop to e7, white castles, black castles. Okay. Here, a lot of times, white plays bishop to e3, king to h1, a4, but f4 is the second most popular move even till this date. And Fischer played the best move a5, and I think this is the idea of delaying a6 in the knight draw and playing the classical. The one good side is now you have the a5 push to get this knight out, but the downside is now your b5 square is quite weak and you cannot play b5 to gain counterplay on the queen side. Okay, white stops if a pawn on a5 by playing a4 himself, but now it weakens the b4 square. And Fischer played a dubious move, though the second most popular move in this position, which is bishop to e6. And occasions kind of don't like this. And after a4 nowadays the main theory goes like knight b4 because that square is weakened. There is a very direct idea being after, let's say, bishop e3, now bishop e6, and now if you continue like how we continued in the game, now we have an extra tempo, and after bishop takes we have d5. And if anything, I actually prefer black in this position because of well, clean passed pawn on the e file and more active pieces. And white does have a bishop pair, but they are not really participating. So that is how you continue as black, knight b4. But Fischer played bishop e6 first, and now after f5, of course he can play bishop d7 or bishop c8, but he continued in the fashion where how the main line is played. And now knight b4, thinking that bishop e3 and d5 would transpose, but white played a nice bishop to g5 move. And now there is a problem. If you play pawn to d5, I will take on f6, removing the defender of the pawn on d5, and then I will capture the pawn. Even though that would still be fine, you can play that. But Fischer played rook to e8. Now, rook to e8 is very mysterious to me, and I mean, I don't really know what's the idea is. Maybe he wants to play queen b6 and have this bishop defended at some point. Maybe that's the idea. And white played a very dubious move, bishop to f3. Of course, in this position, bishop belongs to c4 square, right? And that's where it should go. You could play bishop c4 right now, or you could play bishop to b5 first to attack the rook because that's the free tempo. And let's say, I mean, if you play rook f8, you just lost a move. And if you play, let's say, knight d7 to justify that you played rook e8 with a good intents, then something like bishop to e3. And white has a full control over the position. Now, you could play bishop g5, queen d2, and we trade. Or, white just gain the knight on d5. So, this is already quite better for white right now. So after bishop to f3, after rook to e8, definitely you should play bishop to b5, but white played bishop to f3. It looks really odd. Maybe just stopping pawn to d5. Not really. Queen to b6 check, king to h1, and rook a to c8. Pair black, a very normal play so far. And okay, now the position is more or less equal at this point. Like white's pawn structure is bad, but white does have this d5 square. And black does have this backward pawn on d6 and this bad bishop on e7. So far everything looks kind of sim. And here you should continue with rook to c1 or even queen to e2. It's all fine. But here white played rook to g1 with the idea I do not know. Maybe maybe one idea could be to play g4, take on f6, play g5 and g6. So having the rook on the g file kind of supports that. But I mean, can you actually play that? You're weakening your own king a lot, and when d5 in the air, you can never open up this diagonal by playing g4. So that's very dubious. Um, well, it is not a losing move by any means, but yeah, it's very dubious why white played rook to g1. And Fischer played queen to f2. Now, this is not the way to punish this. If you want, you are a Sicilian player, then try to pause the video and try to find the typical Sicilian break and make it work while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay? Well, the typical knight draw for Sicilian break is pawn to d5. Even though it is guarded by bishop, pawn, knight, and queen, it is still working. Let's say you play bishop f6. You want to trade off this one piece. Bishop takes f6. E takes d5. Now e4. Now idea is if you take with the bishop, then I take the knight, remove the defender of the bishop. And if you take with the knight, then I take on b2. And after let's say rook b1 and bishop to e5. I will play rook c to d8. Pressure this pawn. This bishop is beautiful. This queen is swinging across to h6. Have some pressure on the dark squares. This knight is beautiful. In general, black's entire army is mobilized while white pieces are still struggling to coordinate. So this one pawn sacrifice is not really a sacrifice. You will recover this pawn sooner or later. So yeah, now black is just little bit better already. So yeah, d5 would have been best here, but Fischer played queen to f2 with a very particular thing in mind. Maybe he already saw like what is coming next. Otherwise, it is quite hard to explain what queen on f2 is doing. And uh, well, strangely, white played queen to e10. Now this gives up all the advantage that white had. After queen to f2 inaccuracy by black, you have to play bishop takes f6 first, and let's say after bishop takes f6. Now you could play queen to e2, or rather better would be bishop to e2 followed by bishop to c4. And when the knight hits the d5 square, it's all white who is playing for win in this position, not black. So that would be great positional advantage for white. But after queen to e, well, white played queen to e2, and Fischer simply takes. So white wants to get his bishop here. Anyways, okay. Now white did miss something, and so does the Fischers. So pause the video and try to find how would you punish this entire system, like entire setup that white has right now, while I give you a couple of seconds. Okay. So, well, here comes the second nitro, or rather the Sicilian typical idea, the exchange sec on c3. And particularly that there's a rook on g1 and the king has no squares, it works because after pawn takes, I can still take the knight, knight takes e4, and not being worried about my knight as knight f2 is a checkmate. Now, this is crazy position right now. I mean, your bishop is hanging, there is mate threatens, the only move you have in the position is g4, where if I take this bishop, you take my knight, and white, I mean, of course I will take this pawn. And now this is hanging. I have a clean two connected passed pawns running up, and these knights are beautiful. So white is busted basically. White can still play this game, of course, but black is just winning, even though black is down in exchange. So that's how you punish this position after bishop takes a2. But young Bobby Fischer missed it and he played knight to c2. So he's improving his knight to d4 now. But it does allow rook to c1. And after knight to d4, attacking the bishop, bishop to c4 by white without thinking much, I assume. And here something strange happened. Here Bobby Fischer saw that the king has no squares, so he played knight to g4 with the idea of knight f2 mate and with the idea of taking the bishop. And believe it or not, Blake K in this position at move number 20 resigned. And I have no explanation why he resigned, because there is one simple move which defends both bishop and the checkmate, and practically the position is equal, and that one move is pawn to h4, which defends the bishop and gives the h2 square for the king. And yeah, the position is more or less balanced right now. I would prefer black slightly because of active knights and this weak pawn on e4 and some counterplay on the c file. But yeah, white has its own trump. There's a knight on d5 which will coming soon. There's a beautiful bishop on c file. The c file is blockaded also, and the b3 is no longer weak. So both have trumps, both have weaknesses, more or less equal. But yeah, after knight to g4, it was in this position that Blake resigned and Fischer scored another victory. Um, and what a game! What a nice as a Sicilian battle. And yeah, if you like this game, then give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the Bobby Fischer's journey. And I'm going to cover every single game of Bobby Fischer in this series. So yeah, stay tuned. And till then, take care.